Well, hello, With Gratitude Matt listeners. My name is Matt Marianne, and I'm the host for the With Gratitude Matt show. We've had some amazing guests over the last couple of years that have shared their own hurdles and how they've grown through those experiences. Our show, with the With Gratitude Matt show, is to inspire our listeners to practice gratitude regardless of how powerful their storm is. You can follow the With Gratitude Matt show by registering on my website, www.gratitudematt.com. Today's guest is Mary Curran Hackett. Mary is married to her husband, Greg, and she is the proud mother of two. She is an accomplished author of several of her own books and a renowned ghostwriter. A few of her books are Proof of Heaven, Proof of Angels. Much of her personal writing stems from the hurdles that she faced in her life. She is a rape survivor. This took place when she was a graduate student at the University of Nebraska. A year later, she found herself pregnant 1,000 miles away from her home in Connecticut. You will witness the bravery that she expressed during these hurdles in her life. Mary, you're such an amazing woman, and I know you're not only going to inspire our listening audience today, but you're going to inspire so many more to truly live their life being true to themselves, being true to themselves. Mary, it's such an honor to get to know you, and welcome to today's show.
Thank you so much, Matt, for having me. And that was quite the introduction. I've never quite had that, so I appreciate it so much. And thank you for having a podcast like this. It's wonderful. I love it.
No, you've got a lot to offer, and I thought, maybe a place to start, Mary, might be just with respect to the family that you were raised in Connecticut, as I mentioned, and a little bit about your adolescence and the upbringing that you're part of.
Sure. I like to think of my background as like the 3S: family, faith, and the firehouse. My dad was a firefighter. He retired as a chief several years ago. So we had my grandfather who lived very close to us until I was 10, but we didn't have a lot of extended family. So the firehouse was really all the friends and family. And we all went to the same churches, same Catholic schools. So it was kind of like being in this really protected womb, if you will, for a very long time. I wouldn't say sheltered is the term. I lived in a very diverse community. I went to Catholic schools with Brazilian and Portuguese, and we had my mother was a religious education teacher at the school. So yeah, it was very, I would say, safe and protected. And so, one thing I will always say about this is I always felt like I knew exactly where home was. Like, I know there's a lot of children who just don't have that sense of what home is. And that was something that I think I've tried to replicate as a parent today, this sense of, and I'm so grateful for it all the time. Dinners every night, 8 kids around the dinner table. I don't know how my mom fed 8 children. I still marvel at it. With a firefighter salary, and she basically volunteered for the Catholic Church. So it was, it's quite a feat. And so I was very grateful for that. I went to public school for high school. Played field hockey. I worked a ton. I worked at a steakhouse, and I was just a really hardworking. I would qualify myself as a very good kid. Just very good kid. Just always working really hard and really wanted to um, show my parents like what a good kid I was, what a perfect kid I was. And so, yeah. And then I went to college at Catholic U and DC and lived there. And then I got into grad school, partly because a boyfriend would lived out there and that didn't work out. But I ended up getting into grad school at the University of Nebraska. So that's kind of my childhood and then some.
Sounds like a remarkable childhood that you lived in, a strong supportive family. I can't imagine it was probably pretty difficult to move halfway across the country away from them initially.
Not really. I was always the I was always the wanderlust one, the independent one. There was 8 of us in a very small house. I was the one who was always going out to a friend's house or, we were all pretty much independent. It's a different time. You have to remember the '80s were, "See ya, we left the house in the morning and you saw your parents at dinner and that was about it." So, I mean, they were lovely and they weren't neglectful. It's just you kind of were like we were a band of brothers and sisters and we had each other's backs. But I definitely had this very independent streak. Things had to be done my way, and, yeah, so it wasn't a hardship at all. Like, I live very far away from my family. I love them, but, as they say, familiarity breeds discontent, and I think one of the best gifts you can give your, child is to not make home so comfortable that they wanna stay there forever. I think my parents hit the right notes.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place to become your own person and to leave the nest, and I did that.
Well, that you certainly did in Nebraska, and I mentioned, your life turned quite a bit, and you had some hurdles to face. I'd love to hear, kind of from your perspective, what happened there, and how you managed.
Thank you. So it's a very long and complicated story, and just for some background, I've done a lot of work with PTSD. I've actually taken somatic and trauma healing courses so I can help other people. And I really just want to say how grateful I am that you didn't explain what happened to me in your words, because I think it can be really for anybody out there listening right now who's struggling with being a survivor of rape or incest or anything else. Having the opportunity to share what happened to you in your own words is a gift in and of itself. So I thank you for that. But yes, so the long story is very convoluted and complicated and kind of re-triggering. So I'll give you the very short, succinct version. I was on my way out to Nebraska, and in the middle of that, some things happened, and I was raped. Or I'd like to say, a man raped me, because it wasn't a passive situation. And I was hospitalized not once, but twice. And several years later, in fact, I had to have a reconstruction of my ureter and kidney from scar tissue because I had internal damage. And it was a horrific experience for myself. Uh, and I didn't quite know how to, as many people who go through this, um, articulate what it had happened to me. And I understand now, as somebody who has studied trauma, how the trauma brain works, and that is your memory is not intact. You have lose the ability to communicate what has happened to you during and after, and memories are fuzzy. And then also you're re-triggered constantly by a number of things. I was very independent, and I thought that I was not going to let the rapist determine my future, so I was going to stay in school, and I went back to school, and unfortunately, I was really struggling. I had depression, I had PTSD. What I now know is PTSD. I was not in any way, I'm talking as a very informed and individual who has this hindsight, but at that time I was what people might call a hot mess. Like I wasn't, I had taken on all sorts of behavioral patterns to cope with eating and self-destructive tendencies, and it was just not a good place. And I relied a lot on my best friend at the time who, he lived in a different area, and he was in the seminary, and, uh, I ended up spending a lot of time with him and his brother and I, who were in very dark place at the same time, kind of bonded because I think, I'm a huge believer that you meet people in the same broken spaces. You will always meet the same amount of people with the equal damage as you, and or lack of. And that's exactly what happened. Is we were two broken-hearted souls who met and bonded, and I found safety and security in that at the time, and I got pregnant. As I said, I was going through a very self-destructive uh, phase in my life, and not to say I didn't love him, but
Mary,
I loved him.
can I just ask one question as it
Sure.
relates to that? So, from a timing perspective, I think it's important for our listeners to understand this. This is you got pregnant what, a year or so after the initial
L-
incident, or was it no
Less than that.
less than that? Okay, inside
Yeah.
of that. Okay,
I was, yeah. It was inside, it was less than a year. It was probably 9 months.
okay, and I guess it's also important. I'd love to hear your perspective. We heard about your family earlier and how supportive and how close they were. Were you able to share any of this with them while you were
Oh
in the?
yeah. And that's what kind of, it created a rift because I think, and that's why I did not want to come home. They didn't really understand, as a lot of people don't understand, what actually happened. And then they didn't understand what was happening to me. Of course, I didn't go home. And so I was going through this incredibly lonely and painful period, and it's self-isolated. And you know, this is a completely foreign concept to a lot of parents and families. It's also every father and mother's worst nightmare. And so there's fear, there's anger, there's frustration. And so we weren't communicating all that much, and I would say a very constructive way. And I refused help. I mean, I was going to, I would go to rape group counseling and such like that, but I um I was so clearly like trying to put it behind me and not focus on it, which is, as we know, like, now we know, is like, that's like a crisis waiting to happen, right?
Yep.
And so it was complicated.
I'm
It was a
sorry, I
complicated.
interrupted you, Mary. So you mentioned that. I just wanted to hear your parents' the involvement in this, and then you got pregnant, and that's where I interrupted you. Apologize for that.
Yeah. And I think that was like the crescendo, right? Like, but they didn't know that I was okay. I was already like not doing well. And then I get pregnant and fear overtook me. Like, really, just like, oh boy, now I've done it. And you think you're going to lose your friends, you're going to lose your boyfriend, everybody. So I definitely, I didn't tell them right away, of course. So in fact, I contemplated an abortion, and I went to Planned Parenthood, and I naive girl that I was, I thought you'd walk in and they'd give you an abortion and you'd be done with it. And actually a woman sat me down and said, um, let's just talk, we're not doing an abortion today. Let's talk. And I thought that was really fascinating. And she was like, I can sense that, you're conflicted and there's a lot going on here. So, what is it that you, Mary, want? And I don't know, it hit me so hard, and like almost in the heart, in the chest. And I've heard that question before. What do you want? People ask you, what do you want for dinner? What do you want? But I think it was the first time I had heard it as a conscious individual. Like, what do I want? And I don't know. I can't really, it wasn't a verbal experience. It wasn't something like I heard a voice in my head. It was very physical, and I felt very strongly that I wanted to be this child's mother. And that's what I said out loud. I said, I think I want to be a mother. And she said, that's your choice. You have a choice. So I basically knew in that moment that I was going to be a mom. And I knew that with that decision, a million other decisions, the word decide comes from the same word as patricide, homicide, suicide, that there'd be a death to a million other decisions, right? I wasn't going to probably finish school. I was probably going to lose a lot of people that I loved, and it was going to be devastating for a lot of people. But I knew that love was greater than any of the fears. And so I just grabbed onto it and said yes. And the woman was incredibly compassionate and supportive. And we actually set up appointments for prenatal visits, and I got prenatal vitamins. And I went home and I had to call my boyfriend at the time and tell him that I was not having an abortion. I was going to keep the baby. And that's pretty much when everything kind of bottomed out from there.
Well, it's remarkable. I'm sure you think about that woman a lot. And had she not
Too.
simply asked that question, those four words, what do you want? And how
Yeah.
those four words changed your life is
Yeah,
pretty amazing.
it is, and they come to me all the time. I'm incredibly grateful for it. I always feel like it was, divine intervention, but also I really, really think that is love.
Y-
Choice, advocacy for somebody, and letting somebody choose for themselves what it is that they're called to do, and inviting them to look inside their heart for what it is they want. And I always said, and I said it to my daughter, it's her birthday today, you are the best decision I ever made. It was a decision, it was a choice. And I think not every child gets to hear that that they were chosen to be brought to this earth and to be loved fiercely and devotedly. And she knows that with every fiber of her being. And I think it means a lot to her.
So
I
today
know
she's
that.
22. I'd love to hear, beyond just it being such a blessing that you made that choice. What's the relationship like today?
She is just a lovely, lovely, person. She's very fiercely independent, so I see where she gets that. She goes to DePaul University up in Chicago. She wants to be a film student. We bonded a lot over the years over our love of movies, and, she's very talented. She wants to be a director, producer, actress, writer. She's an excellent writer, better than I ever, was,
Actually,
and she's
sounds a
nat
lot like you.
yeah, she's a lot more talented. She has talent, and she's right now she's studying Roman cinema in Rome. Actually, she's taking a weekend jaunt to Florence. So she's living her best life. She's traveled all over Europe. She went to a wonderful high school, Walnut Hills here in Cincinnati, that took her all over. And we as a family have traveled everywhere. She loves to travel, loves to read, is super creative, very loving, sweet, loves animals. She's a really, real, and she's so great with her brother, who I had when I met my husband, and my husband adopted her. So she's when she was 6. So she is just completely loved, and my family adores her. My siblings. It was a rough road to hoe
Yeah.
in the beginning, but I think, once a child comes into the world, it's really hard to, unless you're like a sociopath or a monster, to be like, "I don't want you," that kind of thing. She was just lovely, and she made it easy.
That's beautiful, Mary. You had the nurse that you met that asked you that question, and as I think about our listeners, not all of them are going to have necessarily that support right in front of them. Can you think about like maybe something that they could just ask themselves when faced with a hurdle or faced with a big decision that they have to make? Is there something that they could do for themselves to really be true to themselves and live the right path that's right for them?
Yeah, so it's so interesting you asked that question because I work with a lot of young girls I talk to and mentor, and my daughter. Um, so many people, especially young women, but men too now. I'm noticing raising my son are, especially in this environment where we have social media, we have news outlets, we have parents, we have families, we have political parties, we have religions. Everyone is telling other people what they should do. Should is a bully. I always say that. Like, and we've actually just kind of dulled down the voice inside us, our natural sense of what is right for us. We have all have a very strong intuitive sense. It can be corrupted, mind you, by your environment, your social environment, your family environment, your world. But I really think if you stop and I know this sounds really like woo, but breathe and really just quiet your body and your mind. Deep breaths, long exhales. You're a yoga. enthusiast, so I know what I'm talking about, that sense of grounding, both feet on the ground. Get away from the noise. I had to get away from my boyfriend and his family, his mother and father and their opinions, my parents' opinions. Um, I had to sit and stop worrying about what everybody else wanted and thought was right for me, and listen really clearly to what my calling was inside. And there, it's the right one if it's, and I say this, if it makes you and I'm not saying this in the bacchanalian, like, pleasure center feels good. Feeling good meaning it feels good, it feels right, it feels calming. It feels like you're home. There's a sense, there's not agitation. They always say, love, it's not when you're weak in the knees and you feel vomitus or butterflies in your stomach. Love is when you feel safe and you feel secure and you feel grounded. Um, and I think that is like learning to listen to the messages that your body are sending you, or they're just indicators of what you really or truly want to do. And I'll tell you, if you are doing something out of fear of what parents will think of you, fear of what society will think of you, fear of what your church will think of you, fear of what the neighbor down the street will think of you, it's the wrong decision. You will never make the right decision out of fear. And it will never be your decision. You will be living the life of someone else's choices and who never has to live your consequence, mind you.
Right.
They just have to live with your opinion. But if you act out of a place of sincerity and love, I think everything literally, I know that sounds very like hunky-dory, will work out for you.
I think it makes sense. I
Follow
love
that
it.
path.
I do. Makes a lot of sense and appreciate it. And you touched on something. You touched on just breathe. And in meditation, that's a big part of it. I know you're a big believer in prayer and meditation.
Mhm.
How long have you been practicing yoga, and what have you seen the practice of yoga and meditation do for yourself?
Well, it started about 22. It's kind of funny when you're on your knees. Where a better place to start to pray, right? When you're on the ground and you got nowhere else to go. But there are two distinct things that kind of led me to the path of like seeking help and getting better. And if you'll just bear with me, it'll take me probably a couple of minutes to explain it. But the two distinct ones, the first one was, as I said, once I expressed that I was going to keep this baby, a lot, there was a lot of vitriol, a lot of judgment, a lot of fear. And fear makes people, a lot of it was coming from a place of love, but sometimes, as I always say, anger is just fear on the way out. There was a lot of anger that was fueled by fear. I was a hot mess. I was not taking care of myself. I was clearly depressed. And here I was pregnant and alone and pretty much broke. And you can see why parents and family members would be like, this is a bad, bad idea. This is a bad scene. And at the time, I felt they were all horrible people. How dare you? Just love me, just support me. But now, as an adult looking down, you're just kind of like, oh my gosh, come on, get yourself together. So I ended up attempting suicide because when I say I was clinically depressed, I mean I had no horm. I mean I had no serotonin left in my brain. I was completely depleted. The stress was insurmountable. I had no money. I had no help, and I was put in an institution for a 72-hour hold, and I met a psychologist, another, like I always say, faceless angel. Like, I can't remember their name, their face, but he said, "I don't think you're depressed." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "I'm pretty sure this is depression." And he goes, "No, no, no, no." He was like, "You need love and support. You need the most basic human need that you don't have right now. You don't have a partner with you right now. You don't have anyone holding your hand at night or rubbing your back. You're all alone and you're terrified. You need love." And I was like, they say like, "Oh, I feel," the young kids say now, "I feel seen." Well, that's exactly it. I felt for the first time someone just got it. Billy Graham has a quote is, "A person who's suffering doesn't need a lecture, they need a listener." And I think for the first time in my life, I had somebody who I didn't even have to speak the words, they just understood what I needed,
Yep.
and, which was love, and, he kinda so we got counseling, and I started to go down this path of, like, self-care and self-love, and then, it was kind of slow. I started reading books about that, compassion. I discovered Maitri or meta meditation, the idea of, um I learned that from a man that I worked with. I was a corporate writer when my daughter was an infant, and he was a former Zen Buddhist, monk, and he gave me this book by Sharon Salzberg called Faith, and in it had all the prayers, meditative prayers for Maitri or meta meditation, in which you wash yourself in self-love first and compassion and love and peace and strength, and then you extend that out to someone you love. So it would be my daughter or my parents, somebody easy. And then you send it out to uh, a stranger. And so I would think of like my bank teller or the people I waited tables on at the steakhouse I worked at night, or whoever I could see. I would send them love and peace and strength. And then the last one you do in your prayer is to those that harmed you, or require your forgiveness, or who are enemies. And for a long time, I just nope, not going there. But eventually, I was able to do that toward my daughter's father. I was able to do that toward my rapist. I was able to do that toward anybody. And it is transformational because you start to look at everybody as the same as you. They were all children who didn't have their basic need of love met.
Yep.
And so they didn't have the tools to make the right decisions. They didn't have the ability to see what was the best for them and their highest good. And so you start to look at people in a different way when you start to extend the love to them. You actually end up feeling incredibly grateful for them, like, oh, like, thank you for this experience. Thank you for this lesson. Thank you for this suffering. I've grown so much from it. I wouldn't have been this. I don't know what path I would have gone on had I not met you. And so it's a weird thing to go from I'm a victim of this person, and I literally hate this person, which ironically was causing me more suffering than anybody. I can assure you my daughter's father was not feeling how much I was angry with him. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like,
Yep.
or his father and mother were not feeling that. They were living their life, and I was the one ripping myself apart over it.
Yep.
So I think love, that those meditation, and then yoga kind of flows out of that, and so it just became part of my practice. And as you know, the more you read, the more you know you don't know, so you just keep reading and reading. So it was Joseph Goldstein and Jack Kornfield, and then Ram Dass, and it was just more and more reading, more and more practices until it just became a way of life. I'm not saying I'm a perfect or a saint, far from it. I always laugh. It's like about those memes that say, I do yoga, but I still want to smack people. Like that is that the urge is always there. That's why we meditate. That's why we go back
Yeah.
to the mat, because you have to quiet your impulses, if you will. So
You know what's interesting that you bring up just the word love. We had on a previous show we had Todd Houston on, who's the founder of what he calls the Love Leaders Institute. In fact, he's coming out with a movie, a documentary on the power of love. And I was talking to him recently about it. I'm really excited to see what he's doing there. But I just think it's really cool. I just the power of love, and um, it really kind of starts with self. And you touched on that. And how long did it take you to really fully, love Mary?
well, I think always a process, right? Forever. And I think it's going to be ongoing to the day I die. And I think if it, like everything, I think it was Zig Ziglar who said, like, inspiration is like showers. If you don't take one every day, you lose it. You just don't get one shower in life and you're good. It requires your constant effort. It requires your constant attention. And that's another thing. Love is attention. Love is where, we talk about in yoga drishti, your focus. There is no greater thing, I think, when you think about love than giving your full attention to somebody and your focus. And it's very easy as a mother, as a friend, as a person, as a wife to lose focus on yourself. It's very easy to let all of it go and to kind of deplete yourself. And so I don't ever think it is selfish for women or men to focus on loving yourself. If you do not put yourself as a priority to love, you will basically have nothing left to give. You cannot serve from an empty cup. And so I start with meditation. I start with prayer. I start with self-love when I see moments of weakness, when I see moments of like resentment peaking up. I always think feelings are just indicators of what you need work with. And so, like, oh, I'm feeling resentful. So that means I'm not having a need met. I'm not either vocalizing it or I'm not taking care of myself. So I need to back up before I project that nonsense onto anyone else around me and take care of myself. And when you love yourself, you are not looking externally for your children to validate you, your husband to validate you, your workplace, your clients. You're just happy. You're good. And you're not attached to like, oh, and then you have a little bounce in you. So when people start throwing stuff at you, you're like, I'm good. I take care of myself. I drank my water today. I had my walk. I meditated. What do you need from me? I can help you now. So I think, and then you become an example to others, right? Um, I think, martyrdom has its place. And I think Jesus died so we didn't have to, as they say, you know, there is a, there, but I think we've taken it to the extreme as a culture to be like the long suffering, busy, overworked, depleted, um, empty shells. And we don't focus on what we need, which is really basic love and kindness and compassion toward ourselves and spaciousness and forgiveness.
Yep. At the close of every yoga class, they always say the word namaste. And for the longest time, I really didn't really know what that meant. And I looked into it. But today I know it to be, my soul honors your soul. I honor the light, the love, the truth, the beauty, and the peace through you or within you because it is within me. And when you hear the word namaste, today, what does that make you feel like? And how do you interpret what I just read to you?
How do I interpret it? Well, I know that the direct translation is I bow to you, or like you said, I honor you, and it's essentially a greeting. But if you go, I've traveled to yoga studios all over the world, and everyone has a little twist on their little message at the
Yep.
end. Their unique spin. And I love, one of my teachers says, the light in me is merely of a reflection of the bright light shining in each and every one of you.
Yep.
And yoga means union. It means yoke. It means we are one. So I take that as, and I say this with a lot of gravitas. We are one. You, me, everyone in the world is one, and that is the basic premise of yoga. Is that the idea that separation is an illusion, that we are all these individuals who are just bumping up against each other in the world. Yes, our bodies are, but our soul is one. And there's a song when I was a kid in choir, we used to sing "One Bread, One Body."
Oh yeah, one bread, one body.
Yeah, I'm not going to sing for you because everybody turn off the radios right now. But like I uh, I I never got it. I just thought that was about just going up for communion. And then the more you read and the more you understand the yogic tradition, the Vedic tradition, Buddhism, Zen, or even Christianity, because I'm a bit of an omnist in that there's truth in everything, and that truth is love, and love is union, it's oneness with everybody. There's no separation. So that means when I hate myself, I'm hating you. When I'm harming myself, I'm harming everyone around me. Um, and the converse is true. When I'm loving myself and I'm lighting myself up and I'm taking care of myself, I'm able to take care of everyone around me. I'm able to shine brightly so that others may have permission to shine brightly. And that I'm taking care of the one bread, one body of our world. It's very it's very high-minded. I always say it's aspirational. It's something I have to think about all the time. Believe me, if you were in a car with me driving down the street and somebody was cut me off, I'm less one bread, one body, and more like the middle finger. So, like,
Nah,
there's just
I don't see that.
yeah,
There's no way.
I'm
There's no
from the
way.
East Coast, so you should see me. My best is my son's peel out story is I peel out in the parking lot at his school and Namaste is in the bumper sticker. Gotta have a sense of humor too. It's the what
Oh.
is it? The Jewish cone or philosophy is like everything matters and nothing matters. You have to be able to live with the paradox, like of both. So
You know, you
I
brought
think,
you brought something up that made I just recently heard this. So when you talk, and I heard somebody was doing a training, he was talking about the like getting us stronger as a team, getting us, and what's the first letter in us, and that's you. In order for us to get stronger and better, you have to get stronger, and that's what I heard. I mean, like if you don't, and I love what you just said. That's so beautiful about how like in order for the world to fully see the gifts that's within inside you and even myself, I've got to be strong and healthy. I've got to be in every facet of life, whether it be mind, body, spirit, the whole 9 yards. That's awesome. That's
a-
so beautiful, Mary.
absolutely, and it goes back to, and I'd hate to go back to the beginning, but choice, ownership. When you make a conscious choice for yourself and you own your BS, all of it, and what you're responsible for, that is transformational. Because then there's no one else who's at fault for what happened to you, who you are. When you have to take 100% responsibility for yourself and love yourself and know it's no one else's job to do that. It's no one else's job to fill your cup up but yours. That is where change happens. If I was going to sit around and wait for a support check to roll in, or I was going to wait for someone to come and finish my degree for me, or if I was going to wait for somebody to write the book for me, like it only starts from within. And you know I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert, she wrote Big Magic. I love that book, but she says, the only time change happen is when somebody just gets sick of their own BS. She says it more, it's like only then. It's not going to be when your mom and tells you, your dad or your husband or your wife. They'll shout it from the rooftops that they want you to change. But no one in the history of the world has changed unless they said, they made the choice, I'm done with this. I want a better life. I want to do something. And for me, I had a catalyst. You look at your daughter. I looked at my daughter and I was like, yeah, I gotta make some changes.
Yeah.
Because you want something better for her. I had to do something better for myself.
That you have done. You know, we haven't talked a whole lot about the writing and you being an author, but I mentioned a couple of the books on the front end, but I know you probably you read a lot as well. Is there any one or two books that kind of helped you transform yourself into who you are today, or something that you've read that maybe our listening audience should tap into?
Oh, I mean, oh my gosh, it's like Sophie's Choice. So many decisions, so many good books. I well, I think if we're talking about love specifically, I think A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, which is based on the Course in Miracles, which is a 365-day guide through the miracle transformation of recognizing that you are love. is really, really helpful. I think anything from Sharon Salzberg, she's wonderful. She writes a lot of books on love. Any spiritual tradition that you have, I think every single one, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Hindu or Buddhist, every single, I mean, I've read as many, the Bible, love is all you need, or love thy neighbor as thyself. It's said in a lot of different ways, but all throughout every,
I think
every tradition.
the Beatles
It's
wrote a song on that.
and yeah, and they stole it from, the Sanskrit, and they were out in India, and they were, it's nothing. I also say, as a reader and a writer, there's nothing original under the sun. These thoughts have been around. Buddha was 500 BC. He was writing about love. He was writing about the great I am. He was, the most powerful sentence you can say is I am, and complete sentence. Um, and so I think there's just a lot out there. And I think my sister said something. My sister Susie, we were talking by the pool this summer, and she's very Catholic, and I'm not. And but we were sharing a lot of the same thing. And she said, whatever takes you to the mountaintop. And I love that that imagery. Is it doesn't matter whatever path you're taking, we're going in the same place. As Ram Dass says, we're all just walking each other home. And I think at the end, when all of this, when the end of my life, I know the question is not going to be, did you go to church every Sunday? Did you, which political person did you vote for this? It's going to be, did you love others? Did you harm anybody? And I think that people forget, like, that we're all trying to, like, put ourselves in buckets and divide each other, and that we're not separate. We're supposed to love each other. That's the only reason we're here. And every single lesson, every single person that comes into our life is an opportunity to love more. And Ram Dass says everyone is your guru, but I think he stole that from the Maharaji. Is like, everybody is your guru. Everybody is there to teach you something, and to be grateful for every single lesson, not pick and choose. Well, that one was a good one. That one, nope. They're all here to serve us, to grow and to love more and to come into our own. So I think it's all about love, truly. So I would say a Return to Love, or any book that's in their religious tradition, will guide them a little bit further. I mean, I listen to affirmations. I use the Insight Timer for prayers and meditations. Who am I to tell people which I think if it speaks to you and it sings in your heart and soul, follow that one.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Mary, as we wrap up, I'm just really amazed. I mean, and grateful that we connected through our friend Mike, and on your daughter's birthday, 22-year birthday, and it's remarkable for. I mean, you showed a lot of vulnerability by just sharing your story, and it's just amazing to me at how strong you are today, 22 years later, and you really
Thank
are an
you.
amazing person. I close each one of my shows with a question. Your hurdles that you faced are pretty apparent. They're right in front of you. You talked a lot about them. You even used the word gratitude quite a bit throughout the show. I mean, what are the biggest things that you learned through those experiences that help define who you are as a person today?
That everything, if you are alive, if you woke up today and you inhaled a breath and exhaled it, you will get through it. There is nothing that you cannot survive. If you have made it this far, you will make it again tomorrow. One breath, 1 hour, one day at a time. And it starts with loving yourself. It does start with gratitude. I always say, I put myself to sleep. It's the White Christmas. I fall asleep counting my blessings. It's the things that I'm grateful for. I fall asleep to as I envision the people I'm grateful for. I envision the life that I love and I am so grateful for and that I have. And I am so conscious that the life that I have today, what it seemed impossible. I was on a wick. I had no money. I was going to be evicted from my apartment. I was 8 months pregnant. And if you had told me I'd have traveled the world, my daughter would be in Florence and I'd be in my warm, beautiful home with my loving husband and my 16-year-old son 22 years from now, I would have laughed and said, you're all smoking something, because that is so impossible. And I think we don't live in the impossible enough. And I would leave spaciousness for anybody who's gone through this to, yes, stay present and yes, stay grateful, but give yourself the opportunity to imagine, to play, to have fun, and to think about what is possible. Because I really, truly believe, my kids are sick of hearing this, thoughts become things. And if you believe truly that you are capable of doing something, you will do it. If you believe that something is that seemingly impossible is possible, you will do it. And it took me a long time to get out of the headspace that everything's impossible to it's possible. It was little things like, oh, I could get a paycheck. Well, that's possible. And your horizon like gets a little bit bigger. But now, and that's what writing has done for me, is unleashed my imagination. And you know, I really believe we are limitless. We are part of the divine. We are all one. Anything is possible. We live in an abundant world where we are here to serve and help each other, and to never take any of that for granted, and to be grateful for it, but also, enjoy every moment, because as long as you're breathing and you're here, that's our task, to love and be at one with each other and have a little fun and have joy. Joy, this is the time, I always say, it's hope, joy, bliss, joy to the world. Jesus didn't come, like God didn't come and say, suffer and die like me. No, he did that. He brought us joy. And that is what we are here to do. And I think we forget that. And children bring joy, but animals bring joy. Whatever it is that brings, that sense of joy and happiness to you in a wholeness and fulfillment is a good thing to follow in life, I think.
Well, beyond being amazing, you're so courageous to share your story like you have, Mary, and I'm so grateful to have you on today's show. I know your story is going to, help other women, help other men, for that matter, be true to themselves and make the right choices. The choice that you made 22 years ago certainly changed your life, but you know what? It changed Bridget's as well. And it's just such a beautiful story. You are impacting so many lives, and you will continue to impact so many lives. Listening audience, if you want to learn more about the amazing life that Mary's living, follow her on her website, Mary Curran Hackett. We'll put that in the show notes. I've closed each one of my shows by just sharing some of the things I try to do each and every day. And Mary, you touched on it. It starts with gratitude. I try to, regardless of how powerful that storm is, I try to find something I'm grateful for. The other thing is, we are here to help other people. So be truly present to those you're with. Don't neglect them. Be right in front of them. Be present. And lastly, let's pay attention to how we're feeding our mind, body, and soul. Again, today's guest is my new friend, Mary Curran Hackett. If today's conversation inspired you in some way, shape, or form, comment on it, share it with others, and subscribe to the show. Remember, our goal with the Gratitude Mat Show is to inspire our listeners to practice gratitude regardless of how powerful their storm is. Until next time with Gratitude Mat listeners, find the courage to be grateful. Godspeed, my friends.